Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IWillAim podcast. Our topic for today is dating tips in the digital age. And my guest is Meg. I want to do a brief introduction about Meg. Meg is a founder and speaker for Dating Tips by Meg, a nonprofit organization with a mission to raise awareness on the early sign of dating abuse so that others can recognize it early and prevent or end violence well as stalking and digital safety. As a survivor of both dating abuse and stalking, she knows how hard it is can be to spot abuse early on and reach out for help. She shares her story and experience to not only raise awareness, but help victims know that they're not alone. Welcome, Meg.
Hello, well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking forward to connecting with your audience and sharing my experience, my journey.
Thank you for being my guest today. My first question for you, can you share your journey?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I one of those journeys that you don't expect coming on. I guess I could say that I didn't ever think this would happen to me. But in 2013, after recently getting divorced, I started dating someone, and within 6 months, it evolved into a nightmare. I came home one night from seeing my family, and he was asking questions about messages on my phone that I had no idea what he was talking about. And I realized that he was being able to see stuff on my phone already, things before I had seen them. And there was a physical altercation, and that was the night that I figured out that it was unhealthy. It was an abusive relationship. It was the first time that I had recognized the relationship as abusive. And after that, I decided I wanted to get away from him, but it took 7 different tries. In the meantime, he had admitted that he had a camera in my car, a GPS tracker on my car. He had installed stalkerware, which basically spies on your phone, spies on you through your phone or your laptop. Uh, he was tracking me, watching me, listening to me everywhere I went when I wasn't with him. And so I went through a lot of steps trying to get away from him, and it would go and I'd go and have to come back. There were threats to harm to myself, threats to harm to my family. And what basically happened is after about a year, he just continued stalking me using digital means, especially, uh, your computer, your phone, hidden cameras in my houses, to watch me for 7 more years. And during that time, I didn't think I was going to survive. Every day for 7 years, your messages being read, someone watching you, you don't know where the cameras are in your house, uh, just popping up places, breaking into my vehicles, uh, deleting messages, changing your social profiles, all those kind of things on a daily basis. And at the 7 year mark, I didn't know if I wanted to survive at all. I had been basically beat down, and mentally, that was the end of me. Um, and then COVID hit, and some things just stopped happening. And so COVID hit, and my families came home. My kids had one kid in high school, one kid who was working, but they had to stay home for a while, which was my dream come true. And I started healing. And so that year, 2020, was kind of like the changing point for me. And I had been studying digital forensics because a lot of this was digital, and a lot of people don't think that this is easy just for someone to do to you, but it's extremely easy, unfortunately. And so I studied digital forensics. I thought that was the path how I was going to help other victims, and realized that one device, which I had 12 devices at that time, I've thought that this would be the way to help somebody, but one device can take about a year to just do investigations on and find all the information. If you think about how much information you have in your cell phone, going piece by piece and finding out and tracking how people are looking at things and trying to find something hidden inside the phone is extremely difficult. And so I had started sharing my story with people, and after I got over the embarrassment and the shame of what had been going on, I was sharing my story with different people on a couple podcasts, and realized that I could help a lot more people if I shared my experience and then give them the tools they needed to avoid the same experience.
Thank you, Meg, for sharing your story. You went through a lot. When I always think about digital age, I'll think about social media and how things things are easier for us to access. And you always think about the positive side of it, but never really look at the challenging side of it, like what you went through. So thank you for raising awareness. As you raise awareness on the early signs of dating abuse to prevent violence, looking back, what were the signs that tells you something's not right?
Well, there were so many signs, and at that time, I kind of wanted. I had gotten divorced, and this when this relationship began, it was all the things that were missing from my divorce. I've been working with this gentleman before, and I'd kind of been venting. You vent about your relationships and stuff, and he filled all those gaps. The excitement, the going places, traveling, just good conversations, like all those kind of things that you kind of missing in your relationship. But and I kind of was overlooking all the things that were bad in the relationship. I was pretty much almost completely isolated by month 3, not seeing anybody else besides his friends or the people we worked with, uh, which was very unusual for me because I have a lot of friends and I was really close with my family. Uh, the extreme jealousy, something that you just don't see in the beginning. You think it's kind of flattering, and then when it becomes so extreme that you can't even make an order, to a waiter at a table because it's like, oh, you're flirting with somebody like that. The possessiveness, there were a lot of red flags, and I kind of walked over them, and then deep down, I was getting the signals from my own body saying, hey, this isn't a good thing for you. This is dangerous. Stop what you're doing. And I just think that I neglected that as well. And so it was like looking back when I started dating tips by Meg and started talking about what I was going to speak to people about. It's those signs that you think, oh, it's you make excuses for, but that's what leads you up to, and that's the warning signs of the bad things to come. So I really think it's important that people know the early signs, and if they don't know the early signs, that they learn how to listen to their body, and so they can kind of know that something's not right with the situation.
Thank you for sharing the early signs. I think you talk about isolation. That at first looks like it's flattering because now the attention is on you. You talk about jealousy. I think sometimes people think about jealousy is half good and never thought about it half bad. Thank you for sharing those because those are really powerful example of what could be happening, and you might not be aware of what's going on because you're so much caught into the happy part of the relationship. Thank you for sharing that. Are
Definitely.
there any pivotal moment in your journey that changed you forever, and why?
Uh, I would say there was a couple big moments. One of the things is that night that I found out, the stalking had been occurring while I was in the relationship. Um, that I was in a very abusive relationship. I met with a advocate not long after that. That night led to an arrest, and so I had to go meet with a safety advocate. And we did this little checklist, this danger assessment. And I knew that some things were bad in the relationship, or some things I didn't like or were uncomfortable with, but I didn't realize just how bad. And so as we're going through this checklist, there's about 25 items, and 23 of those ones we checked yes on. And the moment she turned around and said, "You're in a really dangerous relationship. You need to get out of this relationship. It's not safe. This this is a a thing that's basically is a premonition of what's to happen, and it doesn't look good for you." And I was a very big moment for me because I had no idea I was in an abusive relationship. The getting hit or getting punched in the face that night, it made the light bulb go off and say, okay, this is definitely not okay with me. But before that, I had no idea that how bad the relationship was. And so getting that, the assessment done was a big eye opener. And I think a lot of people have no idea, like all, the emotional abuse and different things like that, how bad they are and what they mean, as far as things to come in the future.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think the one thing that I think it's that I would say that you did is you're really brave. You not only did you push through the challenges that you face, you're actually here telling people how to, give them guidance, how to raise awareness for them to be able to move forward. If there's someone out there who's looking for advice and unsure about an abusive relationship, what's your advice to them? Like, how do you want them to open up? Because that's probably one of the hardest part. Like you
I
said,
think yeah,
sometimes you
it's really
said you've
hard.
yeah,
Go ahead.
sometimes you mentioned a while back, like sometimes you feel like you're embarrassed at what happened, right? You mentioned that. What's your suggestion, and what type of conversation would you have with this person?
Definitely. I think that there's the biggest thing I would tell people who are questioning whether they're in an abusive relationship or they know they're in an abusive relationship is that you're not alone. 1 out of 3 women, 1 out of 4 men experience violence by a partner during their lifetime. And so, and a lot of times, you don't have to be hit to be in a violent or abusive relationship. So knowing that, emotional abuse is abuse. And if you're not comfortable with it, it's not okay. And so know that when I opened up one day, I opened up on Facebook during this kind of this scenario. It was right in the middle of it, and I was more fed up and sad and mad and all these things. It was a Christmas Eve. I wasn't with my family. I was living in a safe house, and this was the first time I opened up and said, this is what's going on in my life. And it was the biggest post I've ever gotten replies on. Over 300 people at that point in time had replied to my post and saying, me too, me too. Oh, this has happened to me. This happened to my mom. This happened to my sister. And so I figured out you're not alone. That there's a lot of people. And when you open up, people are going to be there to encourage you and people want to help you. And so not to be embarrassed by what's happening or be ashamed. It's not your fault what's happening. It's all on the abuser. And you can say, oh, well, I stayed. There's a lot of reasons people stay. And the average person goes back 7 times before they actually break free from an abusive relationship. And not saying that you can't break free the first time, because I would applaud someone who can get away the first time, but being able to know that it's not easy to get away. It's not easy for it to stop. It's not easy to share with people, but there is help out there. And one of the people I always would like to praise is the advocates. Your local victim resource center. If you don't feel like you can open up to a family friend or, someone close to you, reach out to your local crisis center, because those people they know the signs, they know the patterns, they know what you're going through. They've seen all those different things, and there's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed of. And getting help, there's life out there afterwards. So definitely reaching out, and just, those things are definitely confidential. If all you need to do is talk in the beginning, you want to assess what's happening, or you're like, I already make a safety plan. I want help to get out of this now. Those are the people that are out there to help you. And then, if you're a family or friend that's listening to somebody, just be there for them. You don't have to be an expert in abuse to be a good support system to a friend. You can just listening to them, believing them, being on their side, and then keeping their confidentiality. You're a great support system for someone who comes to you as a friend or someone who's being abused.
Thank you for sharing the part of being a support system, because that often something that we don't think about, right? I think we think about the victim going through what they're going through, but if they reach out to their family or friends, it's good that you actually mentioned be there for them, be a support for them, because that's something that's quite important in the grand scheme of things. I think from the point that the person reach out to someone or open up to the world, right? Let people know what's going on with them. What are the steps that they could do in the next few weeks? Right after they tell people what's going on, how could they better protect themselves from what's going on?
Well, some of those things is one of the things you do with an advocate, and you can also do this online. But it's nice to work with an advocate just because they have a lot of good ideas for you. Is create a safety plan. Getting out of an abusive relationship is a very dangerous time for somebody. As if you're in this relationship right now and you're questioning, like, gosh, if I leave, he's going to do this to me, or she's going to do this, because it happens to both men and women. But is to create a safety plan. Have a plan, and it tells you basically, if this is happening, what I'm going to do. If this happens, what I'm going to do. It takes some of the chaos out of responding to a dangerous situation. Pack a bag, have a safety bag, get your papers together. Have your IDs, your license, your social security number, those kind of things safely packed away, or give them to someone who can hold them for you. So when you get ready to start over, you're not having a whole bunch of extra stuff on top of that. If you can start saving some money, that's great. But if you don't need all these things, if you just decide you're ready to leave, I would say my number one recommendation is to make a safety plan, just because you want to plan or have as many options or things available to you if something does go awry. What should I do? Who should I call? How should I how I should proceed to make it so it's safe. But there's a couple little things you can do. You can also be letting a friend or a neighbor know that you're going to be leaving. You're going to try to leave, so they can help protect you as well. And they don't have to come in and step in the middle of a physical altercation, but they can just be like, oh, if you need a safe place to come, if the only place you can get to is next door, you can come here. I think those things are all important for people to just kind of work out a little bit ahead of time, because sometimes if you do it on the fly, it's just there's so many ups and downs. There's so many things that can happen, but if you can plan just a little bit of that, it makes a little bit more chance of being successful.
Thank you for sharing the thought about creating a safety plan and working with your local advocate. I think those two are quite important. I think it's great that for the audience to be able to hear that. As as people listening to this particular episode of the podcast, what do you think are the resource or ways for them to learn more about this particular topic?
Well, there's tons of resources out there. Um, I definitely, as a speaker, I come and I talk to people about red flags, healthy relationships, digital stalking, digital safety, all those kinds of things. So you can have presenters come in. You can
Mm,
always talk to, again, local advocates. Look for some of those FYI months. January is National Stalking Awareness Month.
mm,
February is Teen Dating Violence Month. So social media definitely has. I'm not saying everything on social media is true, but there's a lot of great resources out there. Spark, One Love, just to name a few, that give a lot of information about dating violence and stalking. So you can do some research out there. I know a lot of people, if you're being stalked, especially digitally, those websites will come on there and say, here's how you exit this website so it's not doesn't in your history, so that someone that can't see what you're doing, can't see that that's what you're researching. So they've made a lot of concessions to make sure that you can do some research without being caught so much doing that, because it's dangerous, depending on what the person is and what your abuser's doing to keep track of you. You have to kind of do everything as safely as possible. And so I think some of those websites have made it really easy for people to get some information, but then get out. And the calling is of course confidential and anonymous and free. So there's lots of different ways to get information. And I have Instagram, social media. I try to post everything, almost every day, about different tips about either stalking, social cell phone safety, online safety, dating tips, healthy relationships. So there's lots of different ways to learn more about what's happening to you, and then figure out what's going on in your life. Or if they even have that checklist, that dangerous assessment checklist, I believe it's called, and you can figure out where do I rate, what does my relationship look like, am I in a healthy relationship? There's those quizzes. Is it healthy or is it not healthy? So I think it's if you have the availability to go out there and do some research, there's information's out there for you.
what I'll do is I'll collect some of this resource and also add it to the post. So this
Okay.
way the listener could actually use them to kind of assess what's going on, whether something is really happening or not, or they're not aware of what's going on. So I'll collect all of this link or resource to the website, and I'll make it available to. I think at this point I want you to share with people what are the projects that you have on your plate right now. What are sort of things outreach you're doing? Do you have any planned talks that's coming up over the next week or months?
Yeah. So fall and spring will be a big thing. Looking at universities and going to talk to young people about the early signs of dating abuse and cell phone and digital safety. So a lot of things will go into the fall. The summer is kind of schools are out. I'll do some community events, local community events, some Facebook Live. I'm working on a webinar, and so I hope to get that started. And also, I don't know how I'm doing because Will's amazing. I don't know. I'm looking at starting a podcast to further talk about this subject in depth. Week after week, kind of giving people information and showing them the experience, and then giving them the helpful tips to stay safe. So those are some of the kind of things I'm starting. Also, uh, been working on this for quite a while now, but working on a book and getting that book out there
Uh,
so people can read the experience. So
yep.
there's a lot of projects in the works. It's a lot of work as a solo entrepreneur, but I've gotten a lot of great help. As Will, I'd like to say thank you. You've been very helpful as well. But it's getting those next steps out there and getting people to know the information, and that's the big most important thing to me, is people having the information so that they don't have to go through the same thing I did.
Thank you. I think definitely you said webinar. Once your webinar's out, uh, let me know. I'll also share it with my network. I think it's important for people to actually hear the message that you're sharing. your book. I'm excited. Hopefully, you work with Elizabeth on the book, and
Yeah.
your book would come out. I think that's really something that's very powerful and important. And then, last but not the least, if you podcast, I think I'll be more than happy to partner with you in launching your podcast and helping
Awesome.
create your podcast. Be more than happy to do that. But really, I think I appreciate you coming out and helping the audience understand the challenges that they could have and that they're facing. If anyone wants to reach you, I would actually post some of the link you have on Instagram that you share with me. I think share it on the post itself. This way, people can reach out to you,
Perfect.
especially where we have webinar. If there's three things that you wanted the audience to take away from today's episode, what would those three things be?
Um, First, number one is you're not alone. Uh, if you see someone who you think is in an abusive relationship, reach out to them. You don't have to preach at them or anything. Just say, I'm concerned for you. Because you can save someone from having that alone moment. And then, reach out for help. Reach out for the help. Get help. There is life after abuse. There's 7 years. I didn't really think I was going to come back from after 7 years. And I really didn't expect to be standing here, being able to share my story and share my experience and help other people with what would happen to me. But there is life after that, and you deserve it. So don't give up.
I think I love the last part that you said. You deserve it, right? I think that's so powerful message. And the first message you said about you're not alone. I think you're not
Yeah.
alone is another powerful message. Because sometimes when we're going through something, we felt like we're the only one going through that. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, and also the other one on, reach out to your friends if you're concerned. You have any thoughts or some idea what's going on. Just reach out and have a conversation. So thank you for sharing those three key takeaway. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you, Meg, for coming to my podcast today and sharing with my audience your journey, your knowledge and experience, and more importantly, the awareness that they're not alone, that there's help out there, and that they could actually overcome this. I really, thank you for being brave, being strong, and really, in many ways, you're giving the world a gift of you and your knowledge and experience, and I think that that would touch a lot of people's heart. And really
Oh,
thank you for being our guest today and really
oh.
appreciate your time, Meg.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I mean, every time you get to be a guest and share what you're doing, you get to reach a bigger audience, and I know that you have a great following, and so I love to be able to have a captured audience that's wanting to hear information and how to help other people out there and make the world kind of a better place. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll end with that one. Help the world become a better place. Thank you, Meg, for your time. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.